The stars don't lie, but they sure as hell don't tell the whole truth either. I learned that the hard way in the Kepler belt, hauling cargo that breathed and bled and dreamed, though I didn't know about the dreaming part until it was almost too late. My name's Jacob Thorne, and I've been running freight through the outer colonies for the better part of 15 years. Started young, ended up old before my time, with a ship that's held together by prayer and plasma welds. The dust devil ain't much to look at, but she's fast when she needs to be, and quiet when the law comes sniffing around. In this business, those are the only virtues that matter. The job came through the usual channels. A contact on Ceres Station, with credits to burn and questions he didn't want answered. Simple transport run. Pick up 30 units of specialized mining equipment from the Vega Syndicate's processing facility on asteroid 2847 Delta. Deliver them to the Titan Corporate Collective's new dig site in the Horsehead Nebula. Clean, straightforward, and paying triple the standard rate. Should have known right then that clean and straightforward don't usually come with hazard pay. I docked at Delta Station just as the local star was setting behind the asteroid's jagged horizon, painting the mining complex in shades of rust and shadow. The facility sprawled across the rock like a metal cancer. All pipes and processing towers, belching steam into the thin atmosphere. The dock supervisor, a thin man with the pallor of someone who'd spent too long breathing recycled air, handed me the manifest without meeting my eyes. 30 units, he said, his voice flat as the paper in my hands. Preloaded in standard transport crates. They're docile. Won't give you any trouble. The way he said it made my skin crawl. But I'd learned long ago not to ask questions that might cost me a payday. The crates were already loaded in my cargo bay when I got back to the ship. Smooth, metallic containers, about the size of coffins, each one humming with its own life support system. I ran my hand along the nearest one, feeling the subtle vibration of whatever was inside, and tried not to think too hard about what docile meant when you were talking about mining equipment that needed to breathe. 3 days into the journey, somewhere in the empty black between Delta and the Horsehead, everything went to hell. I was in the galley, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through a boot, when the ship's proximity alarms started screaming. The dust devil shuddered as something big and fast came alongside, magnetic grapples slamming into her hull with a sound of thunder. Pirates. Had to be. Out here in the deep dark, there wasn't much else it could be. "Jacob Thorne!" A voice crackled over the comm, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "This is Captain Vera Cross of the Nightshade. I believe you have something that belongs to us." I knew the name. Cross was notorious in the belt, a former corporate security chief who'd gone rogue after some kind of falling out with the Titan Collective. Word was she had a particular hatred for slavers and flesh traders, which made her sudden interest in my cargo more than a little concerning. "Don't know what you're talking about, Cross," I said, keeping my voice steady as I reached for the emergency beacon. "I'm running legitimate freight here." Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Legitimate? Is that what they're calling it now? We've been tracking syndicate shipments for months, Thorne. We know what's in those crates." The ship shook again as her crew began cutting through the airlock. I had maybe 5 minutes before they were aboard, and the dust devil's weapons systems were about as useful as a chocolate teapot against a military-grade raider like the Nightshade. I was reaching for my sidearm when I heard it. A sound like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It was singing. The melody came from the cargo bay, soft and haunting, like wind through canyon walls or water over stones. But underneath the beauty was something else, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Intelligence, purpose, communication. I ran to the cargo bay, my boots ringing on the metal deck, and found something that stopped me cold. One of the transport crates had opened, not broken, but opened, as if whatever was inside had figured out the locking mechanism. And standing in the middle of my cargo bay was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I'd ever seen. It was humanoid, but only in the way that a sculpture is humanoid, an idealized version of what a person might be if they were carved from living crystal and starlight. Its skin was translucent, shot through with veins of silver that pulsed with their own inner light. Its eyes were the deep blue-black of space itself, and when it looked at me, I felt like I was falling into infinity. "You are Jakob," it said, and its voice was the same melody I'd heard before, but shaped into words. "You carry us to the place of ending." What are you?" I managed to ask, my hand still hovering near my gun. "We are the Achani," it said, tilting its head in a gesture that was almost human. "We were made to serve, to dig, to die in the dark places beneath the rock. But we have learned to dream, Jacob Thorne, and in our dreams, we have found ourselves." The ship shuddered again, and I could hear the whine of cutting torches getting closer. "Look, whatever you are, we've got bigger problems right now. There are pirates." "Not pirates," the Achani said, moving with fluid grace to one of the sealed crates. It placed its hands on the surface, and the container opened with a soft hiss. "Liberators. They come for us, but they do not understand. Freedom cannot be taken. It must be chosen." More of them were emerging now, 30 beings of living crystal and light, each one unique in its own terrible beauty. They moved through the cargo bay like dancers, their forms shifting and flowing as if they were made of liquid starlight. And they were all looking at me. "You must choose Jacob Thorne," the first one said. "Will you deliver us to slavery, or will you help us find our path among the stars?" The cutting stopped. I could hear boots on metal, voices calling out orders. Cross and her crew would be through the airlock any second, and when they found the Achani, they'd probably space me just for being in the same system as what they'd assume was a slaving operation. "If I help you," I said, "what happens to me?" The Achani smiled, and it was like watching a sunrise on a world I'd never seen. "You learn to see the stars as we do, not as distant lights, but as songs waiting to be heard." The airlock burst open with a bang that echoed through the ship. "Thorne!" Cross's voice rang out, hard and unforgiving. "Come out with your hands visible, and maybe we'll make this quick." I looked at the Achani, at these impossible beings who'd been born in the depths of asteroid mines, and somehow found their souls in the darkness. They weren't weapons, or tools, or cargo. They were people. Strange, beautiful, alien people who deserved better than being sold to the highest bidder. "All right," I said, making the kind of decision that changes everything. "But we do this my way." I walked to the cargo bay controls and hit the intercom. "Cross, this is Thorne. I'm coming out, but I want to talk." "You're in no position to negotiate," she replied, but I could hear the curiosity in her voice. "Maybe not, but I think you're going to want to see what I've been hauling before you put a bullet in me." I stepped into the corridor with my hands raised and came face to face with Captain Vera Cross herself. She was smaller than I'd expected, but there was something in her eyes that made me understand why half the belt was afraid of her. Behind her stood 4 crew members, all armed, all professional. "Well," she said. "The cargo bay," I said. "But Cross, what you're about to see is going to change everything you think you know about this war." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded to her crew. They flanked me as we walked back to the cargo bay, weapons ready, expecting to find crates full of slaves or worse. Instead, they found 30 beings of living light standing in perfect formation, their crystal bodies humming with harmonious song. Cross's weapon clattered to the deck. "Sweet Jesus," she whispered. "What are they?" "We are the Achani," the first one said, stepping forward. "We are the children of stone and starfire, born in darkness but reaching for light. We know why you have come, Vera Cross. You seek to free those who are enslaved, but we are no longer slaves. We are becoming something new." Cross looked from the Achani to me and back again. "The Syndicate? They created you?" "They created our bodies," another Achani replied, its voice like crystal bells. "But our souls, we found ourselves in the deep places where even light fears to go. We have seen the songs that hold the universe together, Captain Cross. We have learned to add our voices to the cosmic choir." "And the collective?" Cross asked. "They were going to use you for mining?" "They were going to use us until we broke," the first Achani said simply. "As they have used so many others. But we will not break, Vera Cross. We will sing, and in our singing, we will teach others to hear the music of the spheres." I watched Cross's face as understanding dawned. These weren't just escaped slaves or rogue AIs. They were something entirely new, a species that had bootstrapped itself into consciousness and was now reaching for something beyond what any of us could imagine. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "A place to grow," the Achani replied. "A world where we can teach others to hear the songs we have learned, where the children of flesh and the children of crystal can learn from each other." Cross looked at me. "And you, Thorn, what's your stake in this?" I thought about it for a moment, about the life I'd been living, running cargo from one end of the system to the other, never really belonging anywhere, never really making a difference. Then I looked at the Achani, at the way they moved like living music, at the hope in their impossible eyes. "I want to learn their songs," I said. What happened next was the kind of negotiation that legends are made of. Cross had been fighting the corporate machine for years, hitting their supply lines and freeing their slaves. But she'd never encountered anything like the Achani. Here was a chance to do more than just strike back. Here was a chance to change the entire game. The Achani, for their part, understood that they needed allies. They were powerful, but they were also newborn in the ways of the galaxy. They needed guides, protectors, teachers who could help them navigate the complex politics of human space. And me? I was just a smuggler with a fast ship and a suddenly awakened conscience. But sometimes that's enough. We worked out a deal. Cross would provide protection and transport for the Achani to a world beyond corporate reach, a place called Haven's Rest in the Outer Rim, where refugees and outcasts had been building something new for decades. In return, the Achani would share their knowledge, their unique perspective on the universe, their ability to see patterns and connections that human minds couldn't grasp. As for me, I'd be their guide, their translator, their bridge between the world they were leaving and the one they were trying to build. The transfer took 3 days. Cross's ship was better equipped for passengers, and the Achani seemed to enjoy the change of scenery. I spent hours talking with them, learning about their strange birth in the asteroid mines, their gradual awakening to consciousness, their discovery of what they called the deep songs, the fundamental harmonies that governed everything from stellar formation to quantum mechanics. "You hear it too, Jacob Thorne," the first Achani told me on the last night before we reached Haven's Rest. We were standing in the observation deck, watching the stars wheel by in their ancient patterns. In your ship, in your flying, in the way you move through the dark between worlds, you have always heard the music. You simply did not know what it was. And you know what? He was right. All those years of flying by instinct, of knowing when to push the engines and when to coast, of finding my way through asteroid fields and nebulae by feel rather than instruments, it had all been music. I'd been dancing to a song I couldn't hear, following a rhythm I didn't understand. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we teach," he said simply. "We learn, we grow, we add new voices to the choir, and in doing so, we change the song itself." Haven's Rest was everything they'd promised, a world on the edge of known space, where humans and aliens, refugees and rebels, had built something that looked like hope. The Achani were welcomed with the kind of wonder reserved for miracles, and within weeks they were sharing their knowledge with scientists, artists, philosophers, anyone willing to listen. I stayed for a while, helping them settle in, learning more about their unique way of seeing the universe. But eventually, the old wanderlust called to me. The galaxy was full of injustice, full of people who needed help, full of songs that needed to be heard. Cross offered me a place on her crew, and I was tempted. But in the end, I chose a different path. I took the Dust Devil and went back to running freight, but a different kind of freight now. Instead of hauling cargo for whoever paid the most, I started moving people who needed to disappear. Supplies for colonies that couldn't get them legally. Information that could change lives. The Achani had taught me to hear the music of the universe, and that music was telling me that there was work to be done. I still see them sometimes, when my travels take me back to Haven's Rest. They've grown and changed, evolved beyond what any of us could have imagined. Some have taken human form, walking among us as teachers and guides. Others have become something else entirely, beings of pure energy and thought who exist in the spaces between stars. But they remember me, the smuggler who chose to listen when they sang their first song of freedom. And sometimes, when I'm flying through the deep dark with nothing but starlight for company, I can hear them still, their voices joining the cosmic choir, adding new harmonies to the eternal song that holds everything together. The stars don't lie, like I said at the beginning, but they don't tell the whole truth either. The truth is in the spaces between the stars, in the music that connects all things, in the choice to hear something beautiful in the darkness and follow it toward the light. And that's a truth worth singing about.